Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is Your Story, Your Grief, Your Journey. Our topic is, do we grieve differently today than we have in the past? We have the star of our show who is an expert in these areas and more. His name is Mr. Doug Lawrence. Let's bring him out and find out what he's been up to. Hi, Doug.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing well. We just had a great show, and you and I were talking backstage that it takes a little bit out of us to go into these deep subjects, but it's for the good of all, and it also helps us as well. So you are helping change the world every single day, and you've had your own challenges that you've had to overcome that you're still dealing with on a regular basis. Tell us a little bit about why this program with this title is so important to you.
Well, the reason it's important, number one, is it's a place where I feel safe and I'm in a position where I can sort of share my story. And as I've found, every time that I share my story, it has become very therapeutic for me. So being able to do that. So when I think of if that works for me, then what does that mean for others? And so I'm hoping that with our story, with the title that we've created, that it inspires people to feel comfortable, or at least start to get to that stage where they feel comfortable about wanting to share their own personal story and the grief that they're going through and the healing journey that they're on, to be able to share that with us so that, we're in a place where we can help them move forward, but also use that to help others to be able to move forward. Because it's all about looking for ways for us to be able to help ourselves, but also to help others as we go on our own specific journey.
So true, Doug. And we all experience grief in one way or another. And some people are more upfront about it. Some people just carry on as though there's nothing happening. And grieving, I feel today, is more acceptable topic to discuss. What do you think?
I agree. I even, when I think and look back when my mother passed away in 2007, that the grieving process that we went through at that particular time, and then the subsequent grieving process after that, it is completely different it is completely different than what I'm going through today, what I have gone through and what I am continuing to go through. So there is a difference there. And then if I think back to my grandfather, who back in the early 1950s, the grieving process and what was acceptable back then is totally different than what we're dealing with or how we're dealing with things today.
Thank you, Doug. And as an international certified mentor and an international best-selling author dealing with these topics, you would know more so than myself, it seems as though there are more resources. There are more places offering support. There are more books and documents and articles providing inspiration, and shows like this, and people like yourself who have made themselves available to people around the world to share what their experience is, and to have some of the tough questions even just put out into the open as opposed to keeping them inside.
Exactly. So a couple of things that come out of what you just said, and certainly, the one of the first ones is the aspect of, keeping it inside versus letting it out, and being able to deal with things by and feeling comfortable enough to be able to say, okay, I'm okay with sharing my story, or I need some help to be able to feel comfortable to be able to share my story. But it's getting us to a place where, as I typically tell people, is, it's okay to open that closet door and extend your hand and ask for help. And that was not, or that was never there before, because we are always closed off, and we never wanted any of that to take place. So there's, that part is that there are people are starting to feel, they're not there yet, but people are starting to feel more comfortable talking about it. And that's something we need to do a lot more of. And then the other part is, the aspect of being more resources and stuff like that. Like there's a large number of peer-to-peer support groups. There's, bereavement support groups, and all of those. And like, I know there's a program here in the city that I live in that is, I've gone through the program, and I went through it at a time where I needed help to be able to navigate through what I was experiencing, what I was feeling, and all of that. And now I've been given an opportunity to pay it forward, and I'm going to be helping facilitate that conversation with other people to help them navigate through. And I just think how blessed I truly am to be able to do that, and to be able to share the lived experiences that I've had, in hopes that it will help others to be able to, to come to terms with and deal with, the what it is that they're experiencing, and maybe have a deeper understanding of why they're experiencing things the way they are. But times have changed, and I'm, as I don't even think, when I think back to when my mother passed, I don't even know if there was those type of services, or that was made available. If it was, I certainly didn't know about it. And I know for sure that when my grandfather passed away, and even my two grandmothers, that there was none of what I've just explained. There was none of that was available at that particular time period. And I can honestly tell you that, having gone through the program, that it makes a big difference. That's the best way to describe it.
Thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate what you just shared. It really brings a whole world of possibility and of acceptance of mental health awareness. So, previously, in other generations, as we were just discussing briefly, it was put on your smile, as the British say, your stiff upper lip, get out there, get back to what it is you need to be doing. Today, we're saying, okay, we hear you. We're here for you. Take some time. Is it possible that we're too far? I'm just playing devil's advocate. We're just too far this way, as we were too far that way, meaning that maybe people are just taking so much time to understand and to grieve and to pull themselves together that they're not actually living and embracing life in the here and now.
So each one of us deals with grief deals with the loss of a loved one, experiencing grief. Each one of us deals with it in our own way. And I would be reluctant to sort of, say, okay, your time's up and you need to move on, because I don't know, excuse me, I don't know that statement's going to do you any good. And I think you need to take as much time as you need. And a perfect example is I belong to a networking group, and I was matched with a gentleman down in the U.S. and I can't recall exactly whereabouts he was, but he had lost his son 12 years ago, and he still grieves even to this day. He said, it can hit me at any given time, but he said it's never gone away. And he said, I don't know if it ever will. And he said, I'm okay with that, because he said, I've got coping mechanisms in place, and I've learned how to manage my grief and not have it manage me. And I think that's the path that a lot of us need to take a look at.
Thank you, Doug. What I'm wondering is, in a global perspective, when, at least here in the United States, there are more and more shootings, it's unbelievable. And there are more and more people committing suicide, drug addictions. So what I'm wondering is, this may have been going on also in the past, in other decades, other generations, but there wasn't the awareness that there is today. There wasn't the amount of media, whether it's mainstream or online, to bring awareness to what is going on in the world. But as a result of some of these things that are going on, people are having challenges with their mental health. And it's easy to understand if you get caught up and we talked about this a little bit on the other show, you're watching the news day in and day out and day in and day out, and you're looking for the positives, but yet you take away so many of the negatives, that it could also force you to say to yourself, okay, I need to protect myself. I'm putting up this golden wings, to cloak myself in, so that I don't have to be a part of this, so I can protect myself. Is that a good step to take so that you can protect your mental health?
Well, and it's a couple things. Number one, it's to protect yourself physically, spiritually, mentally, and from a mental health perspective, which is obviously, I've kind of touched on it, but it's really important that, from a mental health perspective, that you understand what the impact of this behavior could be on you as an individual, and that you have I'll use the words coping mechanisms in place to be able to deal with those situations, so that they're not, they don't end up managing you. And I think I take us back each time in the conversation. I'm kind of a proponent of, I want to be able to manage it before it manages me, because if it gets to the point where it's managing me, then that's when, depression, the potential for, suicide, there's, all kinds of different outcomes that can take place that are not in what I would call our best interests.
Absolutely. Great points as always. And I feel like, as a result of what we're talking about today, we are grieving differently. And at the same time, it feels like if you let it, there's more to grieve about.
Yes, because we now, it's not so much that it's the grief itself, but it's the different things that we have in actual fact, we have a deeper understanding of what grief is, and we understand that it can come to us in a number of different ways. So, as an example, somebody loses their job, they can grieve the loss of their job. somebody loses, they're in a relationship and they end up breaking up and going their separate ways and stuff like that. Somebody or both parties is going to go through the grief of, a broken relationship. So there is everything that you take a look at, you could probably find some element of grief that's associated with that. And then you have to decide, how am I going to deal with that? What are my coping mechanisms to be able to deal with that and be able to move forward? When I think of, the bullying in the workplace or bullying in the schools and stuff like that, there will be some sort of element of grief that will come from that bad behavior, and it will need to be dealt with at some stage. So grief comes to us from a number of different places.
And Doug, I love what you're sharing, and I'm going to take us into another area that I know you have expertise in, which is if you are a business owner or you are a corporation, obviously there's an HR department typically in big organizations, maybe not so much for smaller businesses, and you want to support your assets, your brand ambassadors, your people. You want to support them. And at the same time, you are running a business. So you've got Susan, who's out because she lost her pet. You have Bill, who's out because his health is failing. We could go on and on and on. So in still providing that support, but yet looking at staying in business and being profitable, how do we bring those two things together?
You got to ask yourself, in those situations, though, you have to ask yourself, what would the outcome be if I chose, as the owner of the business, what would the outcome be if I choose to not do anything about that? And so, the stronger message that, our resources are important to the success of our organization, that message gets reinforced when you say, okay, you've lost a loved one or, and I like your idea of the pet, we're obviously going to be looking at, to what extent do we want to be able to offer that ability to be able to grieve the loss of your pet for, a period of time. And I know lots of people that have lost their pet and have gone back to work the next day. And, it's been tough on them to be able to do that, but they've done it. And I'm fairly confident that the organization didn't offer, bereavement leave or anything like that. It was verbally supportive. And, if you need to take a couple days, that's fine. But, taking anything longer than that could be, it isn't beneficial. So, because and I sort of think everybody's kind of different, I guess. But for me, going back to work was my coping mechanism. So when my mom passed, she passed on the 16th of December, and right around Christmas time frame and all that sort of stuff. And I was back to work, I think it was on the 27th. So I didn't, I went back on the 27th, and, I was still dealing with a lot of emotion, and had to figure out, okay, if you're going to make that step, take that step and go back to work, what are the things you're going to do to make sure that emotionally you're comfortable making that decision?
Yes, I agree with you. And I want to take it another layer, which is I know people who during the pandemic, they moved from being in an office space and going to the office every day to working from home. And now they really feel for their mental health as well as a number of other things. They don't want to go back into the office. And so the business owner, the company, maybe they own the real estate, maybe they're leasing the real estate, but they have office space for their people, and the people don't want to come back in. So what do you do? Do you revisit the whole structure of the organization and how you're going to do business? Maybe the whole business goes offline, or maybe just some core group of people come into the office every day, because you want to put your people first. But now we're looking at a whole new way of doing business, which requires investment in technology and other things.
Well, and that's where compromise plays a huge part in all of this, is that, we need to, because I know there's been lots of renegotiation of contracts with unions and with organizations and stuff like that, to be able to deal with and address the aspect of almost like the hybrid workplace, where we want you to work maybe part-time, half-time at on site, and the rest you can work from home. And there's a whole bunch of different things to have to deal with from a policy perspective, as well as making sure that the business owner protects themselves as well, but also takes into account that without employees, they're not going to be very successful, and that the employees are kind of the bread and butter of the organization. And so, as best we possibly can, we need to find a way to satisfy their needs, making sure that we don't end up with a lost productivity and all of that. Because I think that doing the hybrid workplace, I think, is going to help us in returning to productivity, being a productive organization with productive employees. And I think that's, it's doable. But once again, it comes back to what we talked about in the previous show, but was the ability for both sides to communicate and have that meaningful conversation to be able to deal with this and then move forward.
Absolutely. I like what you're saying there. I know myself, when I was in corporate, from very early on, I worked from home. I have ulcerative colitis, and it just makes it easier for me. And then there was a change in leadership, and everybody has to come back to the office. So I just raised my hand and said, sorry, not sorry, not coming back to the office. I had an agreement with HR. And so it kind of got to be a little dicey. And I just stood my ground, because I had to do what was best for me. Because if I don't do what's best for me for my health, how am I going to do the best for you as your brand ambassador when I don't feel well and I don't feel like you're supporting me?
Yeah, that, and especially when you're in the role of a brand ambassador, where you're trying to posture or position the company as one of the top companies to come and work for, and here are all the reasons why. And yet, if you're not being supported in the role that you're in, the messaging is completely different, and it's not a nice message.
That's true. And I think something that we have to take away from this is that this is the one and only life we have. Of course, if we believe we're coming back as something else, that or another time, that's a different story. But still, in this life, we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to be in scenarios and in relationships and in situations where we do feel supported and we do feel heard. And I think that's the message that I want to convey to people is, if you have rules, I know rules are hard and fast in place, but maybe we need to revisit them and look at our people, because our people are our business. Our people are our brand. They're everything.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I've always been a strong proponent of, you have to take care of your people, because they're the most important thing that you have in the organization. And the more that you take care of them, the more that they're going to give back to you and help your company stay profitable and productive.
And Doug, we all know people who will say, I went through this and my employer stood right by me. I couldn't believe it, the way that they gave me the time, the way that they had resources, counselors, and they can't stop saying enough positive things about the company and the culture there, as opposed to, yeah, they kicked me when I was down. They didn't have my back at all, and nothing really good comes from that. So I think we have to have rules, we have to have the handbook in place, but we need to revisit it based on what's happening in the real world.
Well, and maybe we need to shift our thinking to one where the handbook is just that. It's a handbook with not necessarily you shall do things this particular way, but here are some guidelines for how to deal with different situations, so that it's not a hard, steadfast that, if this happens, you do this. That takes away the ability to utilize common sense. And I think when we get to that stage, then we're probably doing more harm than good. And so we need to be able to look at it through a different lens.
Absolutely. And I was in the business of employee recognition and really giving people a sense of belonging and encouraging loyalty. And part of the way that that was approached was offering people options. So you have the option of flexible schedule. You have the option work completely from home or work in the office, whatever was going to work with you. And as a result of the pandemic, we're a much more, I feel, global world than we ever were. And different cultures have different customs that they observe. So in some parts of the world, they take off for 3 hours. So if you have somebody from there working on your team, embrace that. How can we embrace our differences? How can we embrace what each of us need so that we are supporting each other and the needs of our family, our community, our business, and humanity?
Well, I think we need to understand from a culture perspective, we need to understand what it is that's important to people who are of a different culture. So they have different ways that they express emotion. So they have different ways that they deal with the loss of a loved one. And as an organization and as a coworker, I think we need to be mindful of what that is and understand that they too will go through some cultural shifts over time, similar to what we've been talking about. But it's really important to be able to get to that stage so that, we can become more compassionate and understanding in our approach to grieving as an organization. Because I think of a couple situations where the organization did not have a process in place to deal with any of that, and the employees who were sort of the I guess that we'll just say they were the good employees. They were the ones that management were so supportive of, and they could do no harm in that. There was the situation where in that particular case, that not everybody was treated the same. And as a result of that, certain employees got better benefits and were allowed to, spend as long as you want to go through the grieving process. We've got you here and all that stuff. And then somebody else would go through a similar approach or a similar situation, only to be told you got 5 days and then we want you back at the office. So it's the cultural aspect, but it's also the aspect of understanding that our organization as a whole treats people much the same, even though the grieving process is very unique to each one. But at the same time, we treat everybody with the same degree of respect. That's the word I'm looking for, the same degree of respect. And we want you to know that we'll do what we have to do to help you get through this time period.
And I think what you're saying really leads to effective communication and effective listening skills. And Doug, you are very well versed on the global workplace. You're, excuse me, an international certified mentor, and you've also written a book, You Are Not Alone, that has catapulted you into a very special category of international best-selling author. How does your book, You Are Not Alone, tie into what we're talking about today?
Oh, a lot. Because the primary message behind the book is the aspect of mentoring and mental health, and looking at how can mentoring support mental health, and it becomes part of the coping mechanism that you can go through, is by doing that. The book also touches quite a bit on the aspect of grief, and how grief fits into the whole mental health picture as well. So there's what we try to basically do is create the picture for the people who acquire the book and who go through it, is that it's understanding how much the aspect of grief plays into all of this whole conversation, and what's considered to be a pandemic and what's not, and then that sort of the You Are Not Alone becomes sort of the segue into my next book that I'm working on, which is going to be the title for it is The Silent Pandemic, and it's going to talk about some other things. So stay tuned for when that's going to be released, and we'll see where that takes us.
Thanks, Doug. And as a mentor, if you were working with business executives, people who had the ability to say yes and to implement change, what would you share with them in terms of seeing each person in their organization as unique and important, and to try and embrace a culture surrounding not only recognition, but individuality?
So typically what I suggest to organizations, and we've done this in a number of places, is we've done a culture assessment, for lack of a better choice of words. So we've gone through and we've interviewed a number of employees to sort of get the pulse of where the organization is at. And then from that culture assessment, what we've done is customized the implementation of a mentoring program with a mental health component as part of that program. And like I said, we've done that in a few situations. And what that basically has done for us is it's created that mentoring culture in the organization. And then we layer onto that the mental health piece. And so by doing so, what we've created is that positive culture, that positive workplace where mentoring can be formal or informal, and that where you can, the organization becomes that safe place for conversations to take place, effective communication to take place, in order to be able to move forward as a organization that is very much focused on its people.
And what kind of interaction or feedback have you experienced when you're having these conversations? Are people really receptive, or is it kind of like, listen, I have enough on my plate right now. I don't have time. I don't want to derail where it is that we're going as an organization. We've got stockholders, et cetera, et cetera. There's always excuses.
Yeah, you're exactly. And it is an excuse. The organizations that we've done this with have, number one, they were very supportive. Number two, they were the ones that wanted to go down the path, and they were just looking for guidance. And so that's what I was able to provide them. So I have yet to receive any negative feedback. It's all been positive, as far as, it's been beneficial to the organization. It's been beneficial to the employees. It's been beneficial to the people that they provide service to. So, it's hitting a lot of the most important stakeholders. And it's given, number one, it's helped beef up the leadership skills that are in the organization today. And it's helped them to better understand where their future leadership is going to come from, and what are the gaps that are in place or that are there today that we need to take a look at and address. In the one particular organization, we did a hybrid. We did a mentoring program that was formal but also informal. And by informal, what I mean is that mentoring becomes a way of life in the organization. And I know that if I need to bounce an idea off somebody, I have this whole organization that I can tap into and sort of say, how would I go through dealing with this situation? Or it can be the flip where, it can be somebody sees somebody doing a task and has had lots of experience and knows there's a couple different approaches that can be taken. And it's simply a matter of how you word it is, I see that you're doing activity A. What would happen if you were to do B, C, or D? And start the creative thinking process with that employee and guide them through that whole process, so that at the end of the day, they get to where they need to get to with how they're going to solve that. And it's been done primarily on their own with a little bit of guidance from an internal mentor.
It's fabulous work that you're doing, and I really applaud you for it, because it's not easy changing mindsets. And I remember when I was in corporate, I had a couple of clients who said, oh, we don't do it that way. We do it this way. And it wasn't even the organization's way. It was this person's way. And I think that's an opportunity, instead of saying, oh, this person's, I don't want to deal with them, they're a problem. Instead of looking at it like that, it's how can you help them open their mind? So it's not just like this, they're seeing the big picture. And I feel that comes from first accepting the person as they are and where they are, because we don't know how they got to be how they are or where they are. And there could be some type of fear element, abandonment issue, all kinds of things going on there. But work with them to see a different perspective. And I always like this, what's in it for them? Mm-hmm. What's the value for them to look at it in a different way? What do you think?
No, I agree. It's if you want the buy-in, you have to get them to think that it's their idea is another way to look at it. And if you can do that without it being you need to do it this way, but using, as I call it, the sort of the question and answer type, it's actually the Socrates method of questioning, is if you can do in that fashion or in that light, and get them to buy in and get them to see it as their idea, it's going to make the transition a whole lot easier.
I do love that. By bringing someone in and making them feel part of it, then they can take ownership for it. And I think that's so important. It's not about me. It's about what can I do for you? And once I do something for you and I do it for you and I do it for you, it's going to come back to me. Maybe not from this person, but from somewhere, because that's the circle of life.
That it is.
You have your book there, and I would love for you to select a passage that you feel will really resonate with us today. Let me spotlight you. Hold on.
Yeah, there we are, close. Okay, I will. First responders will often tell me after a session that they didn't realize the call they've never forgotten was weighing on them like a ton of bricks. Not all trauma is obvious, like the trauma that occurs after an accident or an act of violence. Trauma can also accumulate, for example, through little instances of chronic berating or criticism. Further, it can pass on genetically through our family lines. Give me 100 people, and I'll be hard-pressed to find one without some sort of trauma. These people are everyday folks who are bosses, parents, teachers, CEOs, and government leaders. They are making the decisions that impact others and our future.
Wow, Doug. What you've put together based on your experience is something that can help not just individuals, not just leaders, but anyone who is experiencing a point in their life where they're asking questions. And I think that's all of us, really.
Yeah. Yeah. We all have those unanswered questions that we are searching and trying to find the answers to.
It's been another fabulous show. How are you feeling?
I'm okay.
And to our audience, just so you know, we don't just show up here and just start having a conversation. I mean, there's a lot of depth and feeling that Doug is bringing here, a lot of experience. And so when we finish the show, it's kind of like, oh, let me take a step back and debrief and maybe don't speak to me for a couple of hours because I need to sit with all this. How do you feel after a show?
Yeah, I'm some days, and today's is probably one of those where I'm mentally and physically just wiped. And I look for a place that I can go and just sit and like you said, kind of digest and purge, not purge, but digest and kind of evaluate the conversation and sort of say, okay, what would you have done differently? And then go from there.
Well, I wish you a peaceful rest of your day and someplace that you can go and unwind and just look at the beauty of nature. Wherever you are, there's always something to be grateful for. So, and I'm grateful for you and for you being here today. Thank you, Doug.
Oh, thank you so much. We make a good team.
Yes, thank you. I enjoy it. Really, I do. We have your contact information up here. Would you please let people know you are available for them to hire you? And you've talked before about the fact that don't let payment money be an obstacle. You'll have a conversation, see where it can go. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, certainly I can. So if people, want to have an initial conversation with me, they can certainly do that. You can reach me through LinkedIn and just search for Doug Lawrence. And I've said before, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so it should pop up fairly quickly. And then just direct message me. You can also reach me on through my website at www.TalentC, the word talent, letter C on the end.ca, and go to the contact page and just send me a message that way and I'll get back to you. But probably the easiest one for both of us is to just send me an email. And my email address is doug.lawrence, and that's LAWRENCE at TalentC. So the word talent, letter C on the end.ca, and I'll get back to you right away. And, it's like we've said, if money gets in the way, we'll have the conversation and we'll sort things out. But for the most part, I will not leave you on the island by yourself.
And remember, you are not alone. Doug's book, please go over and pick up your copy today over on Amazon. Thank you, Doug. I look forward to seeing you again soon and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you as well. Take care.
Thanks. You too. Bye. And thank you to our audience. I just want to encourage you. Do you have a story to share? We'd love to hear it. What are you waiting for? Go over to our website, usaglobaltvandradio.com, and book your session. You can watch all of our shows on various platforms, but I encourage everyone to go over to our YouTube channel because they give us real, authentic information about who's watching from where and when. Our YouTube channel is USA Global TV and Radio. Thank you again for being here. We look forward to seeing you again for our next show. Until then, take good care, be safe, and remember, you're not alone. Go pick up a copy of Doug's book today. Bye for now.